Hello, everybody. This is Gary. Today is October 13th, 2021. It's 8:46 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in Rochester, New York, in the United States. And this is my coping with schizophrenia blog entry for today. Today, I wanted to talk to parents of children that might have psychiatric problems or might later develop psychiatric problems. First, I want to point out I'm not a parent. I have no kids at all. The only credentials I have in family is the fact that I grew up with 9 brothers and sisters. One of my sisters committed suicide. And of course, like everybody, I had 2 parents. My mother died when I was 8 from schizophrenia and alcoholism. And my father had to raise the younger kids by himself, which was the 4 or 5 youngest children. The other children of the older ones were already raised and adults. I knew that I had psychiatric problems when I was young as 8 years old. I didn't get to see a psychotherapist until I was 18 because my father was against me seeing a psychiatrist or a psychotherapist. I'd even suggested at the age of 16 that it might be best if I didn't move with my family, that instead I moved into a mental health group home, and my father shot that idea down. But 2 years later, literally on my 18th birthday, I told my father it was no longer his choice for whether or not I was going to see a psychiatrist because I was 18 years old and it was now my decision. So I set up an appointment to see a psychotherapist and put on an antidepressant, which actually turned out to be a mistake because my psychiatric problems were much more severe than just depression, even severe depression. As it turned out later, I developed full-blown psychosis. But my point is that not all kids obviously will grow up having psychiatric problems of any kind, whether it's depression, anxiety, psychosis, schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, bipolar disorder, personality disorders, mood disorders. Some will, and I think parents should keep an open mind about whether or not their kids might develop psychiatric problems, and if they do, to get them to seek help as soon as possible. In the case of schizophrenia, that often develops slowly, starting in early teens to mid-teens to late 20s, or not late 20s, early 20s, as it did in my case. From the age that I was like 15, 16, my psychiatric problems got progressively worse and my behavior became more and more bizarre. I didn't commit suicide, obviously, I'm alive. I got into a lot of fights in school, both elementary and high school. Eventually, I moved out of my father's house into a group home when I was about 18, 19 years old, after spending 8 months in a state mental hospital in Rochester, New York. It was a voluntary admission, but it was a necessary admission. Psychiatric problems can come on suddenly, and if they do, then you need to get your child to a psychiatrist or a psychiatric emergency room if necessary as soon as possible. Um, but more often, psychiatric problems develop slowly over time. Um, and I guess a distinction can be made between psychiatric problems and neurological problems. I'm not a doctor. I'm not sure of the distinction between the two. I do know that schizophrenia is considered a psychiatric problem. Depression is usually considered a psychiatric problem. Anxiety, depression can be considered psychiatric problems. Diseases like autism might be considered more of a neurological disorder. Epilepsy is a neurological disorder. Um, things like Down syndrome are obviously more of a neurological disorder, a genetic disorder than a psychiatric one. But again, I'm not a doctor, I'm just guessing. Um, but in some rare cases, even very small young children, as young as 6, 7, or 8, can develop schizophrenia. It's extremely rare. It's like 1 in a million children that young would ever develop schizophrenia. But young children can certainly develop depression and anxiety. Um, and getting them to a professional might be a good idea. I can't tell parents what to do, and I have no personal experience parenting. I can only tell you what I think, what my father's good points were, the right decisions he made, and the wrong decisions he made. And not letting me see a psychiatrist much, much sooner, or even demanding it much, much sooner, was a mistake. That's not to blame him for any choices that I made. Um, when it comes to schizophrenia itself, parents should be aware that teenagers can start to develop schizophrenia very slowly, progressively, and symptoms get worse over time from like the age of 15 to 16 to 17, 18. By the age of 22, it's a full-blown psychotic episode of hallucinations, delusions, paranoia, um, flat emotional affect, bizarre behavior. Um, Parents should always keep an open mind about getting their children psychiatric help. Is psychiatry perfect? No. Can psychiatry help all people with mental disorders? No. But to let a psychiatric disorder like schizophrenia run amok on its own without treatment, in my opinion, that's just irresponsible. Um, the longer you wait to treat schizophrenia, the more likely the schizophrenic will become an adult, be non-compliant with medication, become homeless, become a drug addict or an alcoholic, commit suicide, or be violent, more likely to go to jail or prison. It's important to get treatment for psychiatric problems like schizophrenia as soon as possible, because once a psychiatric problem that's a psychotic disorder like schizophrenia becomes full blown, it's just all that more difficult to treat, and the problems become more irreversible. I'm the second youngest of 10 children, one sister who committed suicide, and a mother who had psychiatric and alcoholic problems. Um, I can only go by what I saw in my family. My psychiatric problems started out as depression when I was 8, started to become psychotic when I was about 15, 16. And somehow I held my shit together without committing suicide, without ending up in jail or ending up homeless, without using drugs, at least not in my teenage years. I did start using drugs later. But somehow I made it out of high school without being a drug addict or an alcoholic and got my high school diploma. Um, but if your child is showing signs of schizophrenia, you need to get their help. And since I'm not a doctor, I'm not going to sit here and go through the list of symptoms of what a teenager might be going through as they enter schizophrenia. The best place to start is to talk with your family physician, your general practitioner, and expand from there. Get referrals to psychotherapists, psychiatrists, mental health clinics from your general practitioner. That's what they're there for. They're a starting point for these kinds of things. Nobody wants their child to have schizophrenia or autism or anything else. Of course, autism is not at all the same thing as schizophrenia. I only mention it because it seems to be becoming more common among children, very young children. Um, just keep an open mind if you're a parent. Don't think of psychiatry as some demonic, evil, money-making force that's just out to con people, because that's not true. Psychiatry is like any medical field. It's not perfect. It can't help everyone. It can't cure everyone. But that's true of every medical profession: neurology, oncology, dermatology, psychology, or any other ology out there. People get sick. Sometimes a professional doctor can help them. Sometimes they can't. Sometimes it's somewhere in between. When it comes to schizophrenia, to do nothing is completely irresponsible. And remember, I grew up in the 1970s and 80s when the number of psychiatric medications for psychotic disorders was limited to a few drugs developed in the 50s and 60s. It's now 2021. There are many, many, many more psychiatric drugs available for treating schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder or any other psychotic disorder than there ever have been or ever were existed when I turned 18 in 1984. My birthday's in 2 days. I'll be 56. I'll have been in psychiatric treatment since I was 18. And I do wonder if my life could have been a little bit different if I had gotten to see a psychiatrist when I was 8 years old, like I wanted to. So, my message to parents: if your children show any sign of bizarre behavior, unusual behavior, moody behavior, talk to your family physician. Take it from there. Try to keep an open mind. Try to make the best decisions you can.